You can watch them up there.
The stream question.
Watch that and then play after.
Are they connected or?
Oh, we have to admit people? Oh, I didn't realize you have to start admitting people.
A few people, the Shanky family, we mentioned the Lindy, Metz. Also, we are a first Slimer for Chaya, Rochelei Baspatia, and also Moshe ben Yehudit. And anytime anybody wants to, somebody special to, to mention, we should mention it, that it should be a schus for all of them on the, for the actual drosha itself. So tonight we're going to speak about, of course, first of all, wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. And of course, it's one of the beautiful and easy mitzvahs that we can all do. That I see that I'm off again. Right? Huh? I don't know. I'm off. Oh, here I am. I'm on. Okay. Yeah, and I'm on here. Okay, very good. Also, forget that every night we light the candles. We light the candle about approximately 10 past, 5:15. It's got to burn a half an hour into the night, and every night we add it. We put the candles from left to right, and then we you always light the new candle every night. Okay. Anyway, so tonight we're going to speak about miracles. So this first story that I'm going to share with you is absolutely outstanding. Outstanding because I actually heard it this afternoon, and it also it's an absolute miracle, and that's the miracle. It happened with Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Don't know if people have saw it, but I actually saw it also on the video. There's a fellow who actually came as a shlichut, as a messenger from a family to ask. There's a girl, 19-year-old girl, and this 19-year-old girl, she couldn't move one of her arms for 4 years, and she went to doctors, and the doctors did not want to make any operation. They said it could only come worse. So of course the family sent a Rav to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and he asked Rav Chaim Kanievsky what should they do, and Rav Chaim said they should do the operation. You should actually do the operation, and this was against sort of the advice of the doctors. I mean, they decided to listen to Rav Chaim Kanievsky. In a week, she was able to move her arm after 4 years. Then the fellow came back to Rav Chaim, and I saw this today on a video in the room of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. And the person said, he told to the Rav Chaim, he says, I want you to know that your blessing worked. So Rav Chaim answered him, and it says, there's a famous statement in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Al tihi bichat hedyot kala beinecho. Do not allow the blessing of a plain person to be light in your eyes. And, first of all, it shows his anivus, his humility, as if he said, who was he anyway? And he gave this blessing. Then the person says, Rabbi, he says that I was asked to ask, can we mefasim this? Can we let everybody know about it? And they had somebody videoing this conversation. And Rav Chaim said, he nodded his head and he laughed like a little, he smiled a little bit, and he says, no, you can't do it, because doctors wanted to advise other people who had a similar problem to be able to do the operation. And then this person who was a frum guy says, he says, Tzadi Gozer, if a righteous person says something and decrees something, HaKodesh Baruch Hu Mekayim, that God keeps it. And Hashem actually did it. Now this is, you hear about miracles and we know about miracles and we believe in everything, but this is which happened just recently, very, very recently. And this video is actually on the internet for those who look at it, and they actually could see that it was videoed with Rokan Kanievsky. And many times people ask for brachot and people ask for prayers, and prayers, there's no question the prayers work. And we're going to use a posik in Tehillim of what we're talking about today. So really the thrust of what I wanted to speak about today is that we find like the world is really in a turmoil, right? Because of the corona problem. So unfortunately that society to a certain extent has come to a standstill. Few people who came to Esther's place, and wherever you are, and coming together a little bit. So thank God there's, you do get together and people are careful. But we sort of felt that we wanted to, you still have to be a little bit careful, a little bit older, and we are told to be a little bit more careful. But please God that they found this vaccine. It's also chesed from Hashem. And although that in America here, that half the people want to take it, half the people don't want to take it. In Eretz Israel, they bought a few million of the actual vaccine. And please God that I'm sure in a couple of months, maybe even less than that, then things will come back to the normal. And of course, doesn't mean that we should just lower our guard, take off our masks and not worry. But but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But then also when you look, and again, the focus is what we're going to speak about is how to really govern a country. And why I chose this is because for those who've been following the American election is something which is very interesting, because we have this between the two people who are standing up to be Biden and Trump. And unfortunately, we find that seems that democracy is also falling apart. There's been all kinds of isms in the world. First of all, a couple hundred years ago, people thought that socialism, where everybody is sort of equal, communism, that's going to be the panacea for the world. And of course, that hasn't worked out. In fact, you just find that there are people who are despots, like in China and different places, and who have taken over, and you can't unseat them. And the same problem we have to those who are from South Africa know what went on in Zimbabwe, that you had someone for 20, 30 years running the country with an iron fist, and he became one of the richest men in the world. And of course, the citizens, they had very, very little. Then you find that then they tried, then there was a big question about capitalism. Maybe so is it right that some people are rich and some people are poor? And the truth is that Judaism is capitalism, right? So people, how can that be? Also originally when they came to Eretz Israel, they were living in kibbutzim and trying to make it that everybody should be equal. But then you see that it doesn't work. And in the Torah, you find so many laws. There's laws of inheritance. There's laws of an older brother gets double, and there's different laws about for women, and there's Yerushas and inheritances. And then you find that the Kahanim and the Levim, they didn't have lands because they had to work in the Beis HaMikdash, so they got their livelihood from the Beis HaMikdash and from everybody. But you find that there's a tremendous amount of charity, and that's going to be right at the end of the next few words that we say. So we do see that that the world, the different governments have been trying to find out what kind of a government we could run a country. So everybody thought democracy. That's that's going to win it. But we find in Eretz Israel that this fight between the blue and the white, and between and the Bibi and those people on the right, it really sours it. You go near his house in Rehavia, and thousands and hundreds of people, sometimes 1,000, sitting there making a protest. What kind of a country is that? It's what where people really down one another. And then in America, you find that what's really terrible is that Donald Trump, who has been the best president, could be that ever was in America, because whatever he promised, he kept. And yet you find that, you see, when it comes to this democracy, that the other side have been absolutely stealing the presidency from him, which is something which is a terrible thing. That's and some of them, have been found to be not that honest. And when it comes to the voting, it's terrible. And then even when they come up against the judges, that the judges have prejudged and they've decided what they want. And one after another, the judges say, well, no, it's not enough proof. Any normal person can see that there was so much cheating. So even the democracy has really crumbled. So the question is, what is the correct way? How can you really run a government? How can you run a people? How can we live with something which is that we can all survive in such an environment? And the truth is that that when you have to look at the Torah, and it's so very interesting. It's really a classical examination of what the person, or how we should run the country. Because when you look at the Torah, so you see that it actually started off with people like Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. You found that there was a Moshe Rabbeinu, like chosen by Hashem. There was a Yeshua, right, who was worthy to follow on. Then if you look on Tanakh, you find all the shoftim, all the judges. So automatically you see that who was it that actually ran the country? It was a Beis Din. It was a judge. You even found there was one time that Dvorah, she was a woman judge at one time. And so you see that type of a court, that kind of running the country seemed to be the correct way. Then it came down to the times of the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, but what for a great amount of time, 400 or 500 years, each temple that it lasted, there was a Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin was made up of 70 elders, and there was a time of 120 elders, and they made the laws. They made not only the laws of Hanukkah, they made not only the laws of what's kosher and what's not kosher, but there's in the Talmud, that there's the Talmud of Baba Metzia, Baba Kama, Baba Basra. They said they had laws of, it's all from the Torah, but they explained the laws of lending money and interest, of buying and selling, of people not overcharging. So the laws came from actually the Rabbonim, and right up until the time of Shmuel, the Samuel the prophet. So he was a prophet in the time of Shmuel. So he ran the country, and then and of course, like, he was the figure, and then afterwards the people came to ask for a king, and even to have a king was permissible, right? And many countries had a sovereign king that ran the country. But in Judaism, if you look in the Torah, in Dvarim, it says the king was only allowed to have a certain amount of wives, a certain amount of horses. He wasn't allowed to amass wealth. He had to write 2 Sefer Torahs. One Sefer Torah he kept it at home. One Sefer Torah, wherever he went, he had the Sefer Torah which went with him. And throughout the book of Kings, you had Samuel, then the book of Kings, until times of destruction of the temple. So when the kings that they, starting from King Saul, King David, when the kings ran the country correctly, and they themselves were on a level of being God-fearing, doing what the Torah told them to do, then they lived in a peace. There was shalom. People realized that the person who was in charge of the government was somebody that they actually could rely on. So that's, when you think of it, it's such a wonderful thing. So really in a nutshell, that if you ask what is Israel, that Israel is really, we do run on capitalism. Capitalism means that because there invites everybody to do their best. Why should a person be a lawyer or be a doctor, right? And he doesn't do his best, and somebody else should earn or have what he has, and not be such a devoted person. So therefore, a person is allowed to get ahead. There are people that cannot manage to have university degrees, and only people manage to be workers, or a person to be in another field of endeavor. But people who need help, there's a tremendous amount of tzedakah, and in Eretz Yisrael we find it such a beautiful thing. Today I went to daven mincha. I came out of mincha before going to light the candles, and I saw about 20 boxes of sufganiyot, of donuts. So I asked someone, I said, how much are they? I wanted to buy a few, give out to the kids, the grandchildren. So he said, they're for nothing. And he showed me there was a sign. Anybody could take how many, if there's 10 in the family, take 10. If there's 3 in the family, take 3. But people had donated it. That's Eretz Yisrael. And that's the structure. The structure is of where it's done only according to the laws of the Torah. If it's done according to the laws of the Torah, and the king, the shofet, it needs to be a role model. And in America, it's pathetic when you find that there are actual judges sitting, and they sort of the last recourse. And the course of these judges in the various states, and they have to decide to go to the Supreme Court, and everybody's waiting to see if that's going to materialize. But how can judges make judgments where the simple people, who have shown that there was cheating, and the judge sort of like turns a blind eye. One lady said, I think it was wonderful. She says, Judge, she says, I'm saying what I have to say. I've become very unpopular because, of course, the people on one side are like me, and the other people will hate me because I'm telling the truth. But I'm telling the truth. But I've signed an affidavit that if you prove that I'm telling a lie, I'm going to sit in jail. He says, Judge, have you signed something like that? And the judge kept quiet. Can you imagine? So that's actually, we find in the book of Ruth, it says, B'mei shvot hashoftim. The Medrash says, when they judge the judges, and if there's no integral judgment, and that's why we say in davening 3 times a day, Hashiveinu Avinu, that Hashem shall return us and return the judges like the way they were. So that's actually so important. But I'd just like to end off and tell you such a beautiful word that I actually heard from, he was a Rosh Yeshiva in Chicago, Rabbi Chaim Dov Keller. I was in Cleveland and I was with him, and he was a very, very wonderful person. And he said something which is very interesting. He says that when Yaakov fought with the angel of Esav, so they wrestled. Do you remember in the Torah last week's Parsha, they wrestled, and then the angel said, look, it's already morning and I have to go. It's my turn to go and sing praises to Hashem, to sing Shira. And he says, what is your name? The angel asked him, he says, you know what my name is? He says, it's Yaakov. He says, no more is your name going to be called Yaakov. From now on, your name is going to be Yisrael. And he pressed him until he sort of blessed him and gave him that name. Later on, we mentioned it last week, Hashem named him again, that your name is going to be Yisrael. So, but Yaakov asked the archangel of Esav, and he says, what is your name? So he says, we don't have a name, right? We ain't learn a shame, right? Because so Rashi explains, because our name is according to our shlichut, what we have to do. You know, if I have to go and heal someone, then I become like Raphael, the healer. And if I have to go and be a battle, then maybe I'll be like Gabriel, right? In other words, that angel doesn't have one designation. It's just an agent of the Rabbanu Shalom. He said, so Rabbi Keller said, he says that that's what it is. He says that the angel, the names, and of course this was the angel of Esav, where he was sent to do many bad things, and he says, well, what are the different angels which they represent, and their job was to do, which actually harmed the Jewish people? He says, you know what it was? He says, when there was communism, and they found a way to be anti the Jews, and there was and even when there was democracy and people were allowed to go to university, but 100, 200 years ago, Jews in Europe, they weren't allowed to go to university, right? That was another ism. And ism after ism was always used to somehow hurt the Jewish people, right? He's saying it with a modern touch, that here, there, and everywhere there's these isms. Many people, now that they had this plague, unfortunately, you have many people say it's the Jews. You know, they caused it. In England, when they had the Black Death, and they had also Tucker plague, so people said, you know what it is? It's the Jews. All these isms. He says, me as the angel of Esav, who's there to trip up Bnei Yisrael, he says, in every generation, I'm the ism which is going to hurt Bnei Yisrael. But like you say, he's without name. But at the end, Yaakov overcame him. And at the end, the name was given not from Yaakov, who held on to the heel and to in a untoward way, he had to overthrow Esav, and he had to, as if to buy the blessings, and in order to be blessed, he will be Yisrael. That you fought with, as if with gods, meaning the angels, and human beings, and you were able to overcome them. So we see that there are miracles. And the pasuk which at the beginning, which I was alluding to, is, it says, Hashem Molach, Hashem rules, v'togel ha'oretz, and the land is simchadik, is happy. So that we will have to know that at the end, that like a religious Jew, whenever the outcome, that maybe even in America, could be if a miracle happens and Trump comes in, we'll say that was another Nes Hanukkah. Please God, it should be that way. If it doesn't happen, then a religious Jew looks at it and says, you know what? You know why Hashem didn't want him to win? Where he really did win, and it was a landslide, that people shouldn't say, we'll rely on Trump. We don't have to, we can take off our masks, we can be less room, we don't have to worry. America's stepping in, and Trump has got plenty of ammunition and new kinds of planes, and he'll take care of Iran. So you see that whichever way you look at it, there's an upside and there's a downside. But if a person believes in the Rabbanu Shalom, then you believe in Hashem, then you have nothing to fear. As long as we actually do what is correct, what is correct. So the truth is that all the ways that one is looking for a way of how to really run a government is actually, it boils down to whether it's capitalistic, which is in Judaism, and we have, thank God, a tremendous infrastructure of charity, giving Maisa, helping the Kohanim, the Levi, Avos Chesed, to doing the right thing. So that holds up the type of government. But the Unterste Shura, the bottom line.
Zadie, you bumped the mute thing. You have to unmute yourself. Zadie,
Rabbi, we can't hear you. Rabbi,
Abba, we can't hear you. You bump the mute, you have to unmute it on the left hand, on the left corner.
Hi, yes.
Your audio.
Oh, I come out.
Is that better? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I
Now
just
we
want
can-
to end off with this verse. You can hear me, that there's a posuk in Micha, and the posuk in Micha says, what does Hashem want from you? Lasot mish